Cut the music. Now. The command rang out across Madison Square Garden with an authority that silenced every member of Whitney Houston's band. In the middle of her soul-stirring performance of I Will Always Love You, the voice had just done something that had never happened before in her entire career. She had stopped singing mid-note because of what she saw in the VIP section. What happened next between Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey would become the most talked about moment in vocal history. But nobody in that New York arena was prepared for the collision of talent, grace, and raw emotion that was about to unfold. If you're enjoying this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about these legendary divas. It was November 15th, 1995 at Madison Square Garden, and Whitney Houston was performing the final show of her I'm Your Baby Tonight tour's American leg. The anticipation had been electric for weeks. This wasn't just any concert. This was Whitney's triumphant return to her hometown region after dominating the global charts with the Bodyguard soundtrack. The 20,000 fans packed into every seat of New York's most prestigious venue were witnessing what many considered the most emotionally powerful performance of her career. The tour was Whitney's response to critics who claimed she was becoming too commercialized, too removed from her gospel roots. Every song on this tour was designed to showcase the instrument that had made her famous, that otherworldly voice that could soar from whispered intimacy to earth-shaking power in a single breath. Everything about this performance was crafted to remind the world why she was called the Voice. But what Whitney didn't know was that her biggest rival was already in the building, and Mariah Carey hadn't come to Madison Square Garden to watch quietly from the audience. The rivalry between Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey had become the music industry's most analyzed and debated comparison by 1995. What had started as media speculation about who possessed the superior voice had evolved into something much more complex and personal. It was a rivalry that had everything: contrasting vocal styles, different approaches to fame, competing chart records, and most importantly, two perfectionist artists who knew they were being constantly measured against each other. Whitney Houston was the established queen, the voice whose gospel-trained instrument and regal presence had redefined what it meant to be a pop diva. Mariah Carey was the young challenger, the songbird whose whistle notes and melismatic runs were pushing vocal boundaries in ways that made even seasoned professionals stop and listen. Both women knew they were fighting for the same crown, the title of the greatest vocalist of their generation. The Madison Square Garden concert was supposed to be Whitney's definitive statement of dominance. The Bodyguard soundtrack had become the best-selling soundtrack of all time. Her rendition of I Will Always Love You had spent 14 weeks at #1, and this tour was designed to cement her status as the most powerful voice in popular music. But 5 days before the show, something had happened that sent shockwaves through the music industry and set the stage for what would become a legendary confrontation. During an interview with New York's Hot 97 radio station, Mariah had made a comment that was clearly designed to provoke her rival. "I hear Whitney's bringing her gospel show to the Garden this week," Mariah had said with barely concealed challenge in her voice. "Maybe I should drop by and show New York what a real vocal range sounds like when it's not limited by traditional boundaries." The comment was vintage Mariah, confident, slightly provocative, and perfectly calculated to get under Whitney's skin. But nobody in the music industry took it seriously. Mariah was known for her confidence in interviews, and everyone assumed this was just another example of the competitive banter that defined their public dynamic. What nobody knew was that Mariah had been planning her New York appearance for weeks, and she was deadly serious about demonstrating her vocal superiority on Whitney's own stage. Tommy Mottola, Mariah's then-husband and head of Sony Music, later revealed just how extensively Mariah had prepared for this moment. Mariah was obsessed with proving herself against Whitney, Tommy admitted in a 2010 interview. She respected Whitney's legacy, but she couldn't stand the idea that the world automatically deferred to Whitney as the superior vocalist. Mariah knew she had range and technique that even Whitney couldn't match. Mariah had somehow obtained detailed inside information about Whitney's concert logistics, including Madison Square Garden's layout, backstage protocols, and even specific details about Whitney's setlist. She had studied footage from the tour's earlier dates, analyzing Whitney's vocal choices, and identifying the exact moment when she could make the most dramatic impact. Mariah wasn't just planning to attend the concert. She was planning to challenge Whitney to a vocal showdown in front of 20,000 people and live television cameras. She wanted to prove once and for all that she was the superior vocalist, and she was willing to risk everything to make her point. On the evening of November 15th, Whitney Houston took the stage at Madison Square Garden, completely unaware that her biggest rival was already in the building. Mariah had arrived at the venue 3 hours before showtime, using her industry connections to gain VIP access without appearing on any official guest lists. Her team had positioned her strategically in a premium box that was clearly visible from the stage, but partially concealed from most of the general audience. Mariah was dressed elegantly, but unmistakably. A shimmering black gown that caught the arena lights perfectly, her signature curls styled to perfection. To those who knew what to look for, she was instantly recognizable. But she had positioned herself carefully to remain hidden until she chose to reveal her presence. For the first hour of Whitney's performance, Mariah watched in complete silence, her eyes never leaving the stage. Those who noticed her in the VIP section later reported that Mariah appeared intensely focused, like a student analyzing her teacher's technique before attempting to surpass it. She wasn't just watching Whitney perform. She was studying every vocal run, every breath control technique, every moment of connection with the crowd, looking for any opportunity to demonstrate her own superior abilities. But Mariah wasn't just observing. She was waiting for the perfect moment to make her presence known and issue her challenge to Whitney in the most public and dramatic way possible. Whitney Houston was deep into her performance of "I Will Always Love You," the song that had become her signature and remained the most requested number at every concert she'd ever given. Madison Square Garden was electric with emotion as 20,000 voices tried unsuccessfully to match Whitney's soaring vocals. Whitney was reaching the song's famous key change, preparing for the climactic high notes that had made the song legendary, when Mariah decided to make her move. It started subtly. Mariah stood up slowly in her VIP box and began what would become her signature gesture of vocal commentary, a series of perfectly pitched vocal runs that harmonized with Whitney's performance, but clearly demonstrated superior technique. The vocal embellishments were unmistakable to anyone who understood singing. They were Mariah's way of saying, "That's beautiful, but listen to what real vocal mastery sounds like." Whitney Houston, who had developed an almost supernatural awareness of her audience during her years of performing, immediately sensed something unusual in the venue's acoustics. The distinctive sound of another trained voice harmonizing with hers was different from the crowd's enthusiastic but untrained singing, and Whitney's performer instincts told her that something significant was happening in the VIP section. When Whitney looked up toward the premium boxes and saw Mariah standing there in her unmistakable glamour, adding vocal flourishes to Whitney's own performance with that characteristic expression of confident artistry on her face, the voice experienced a moment of pure shock that was visible to everyone in the arena. For several seconds, Whitney continued singing, her professional training carrying her through the familiar melody, while her mind processed what she was witnessing. Mariah wasn't supposed to be here. Mariah never attended other artists' concerts. Mariah certainly never made public appearances at events where she wasn't the headlining performer. Yet there she was, standing in full view of the crowd, making it clear that she wasn't just a spectator. She was delivering a challenge. Then Whitney Houston did something that stunned everyone in Madison Square Garden, including her own band and crew. She stopped singing mid-phrase, held up her hand for the music to cut out completely, and stared directly up at Mariah with an expression that mixed surprise, respect, and genuine curiosity. The silence that fell over Madison Square Garden was immediate and profound. 20,000 people stopped singing, stopped cheering, and stopped moving as they tried to understand what was happening. Whitney Houston stood center stage looking up at Mariah in the VIP section, while Mariah continued adding vocal embellishments to the melody that still echoed in everyone's memory. The tension between them was palpable but different from typical rivalry. It was the tension of two master craftswomen recognizing each other's artistry while simultaneously feeling the weight of constant comparison. Two of the most gifted vocalists in the world were facing off in front of a live audience, and neither was backing down. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds, an eternity in live performance time, as the crowd held its collective breath and witnessed the most famous vocal rivalry in music history playing out in real time. Finally, Whitney Houston picked up her microphone and addressed Mariah directly, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed arena with that characteristic warmth that had made her beloved worldwide. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whitney announced, her tone gracious but unmistakably charged with excitement, "we have a very special and unexpected guest in the audience tonight, the incredibly talented Mariah Carey." The crowd erupted in confused applause and excited screaming. People were turning to each other, trying to figure out if this was part of the planned show or something completely spontaneous. The energy in the arena shifted dramatically as 20,000 people realized they might be witnessing something unprecedented in music history. What happened next would be discussed and analyzed in vocal circles for decades to come. Whitney Houston, still looking directly at Mariah with unwavering respect and challenge, issued a public invitation that nobody saw coming. "Mariah," Whitney said into her microphone, her voice now carrying the gracious authority that had made her a beloved figure even among her competitors. "Since you took the trouble to come all the way to Madison Square Garden, and since you've been adding some beautiful harmonies to my song, why don't you come down here and show these people what that incredible voice of yours can really do?" The invitation was unprecedented, but delivered with such genuine warmth that it felt like an honor rather than a challenge. Whitney Houston was inviting Mariah to join her on stage, not for a hostile vocal battle, but for what could become a historic collaboration between two of the greatest voices of all time. Mariah's response was immediate, gracious, and perfectly in character. She smiled that radiant smile that had graced countless magazine covers, gave an elegant wave to the crowd that was both humble and confident, and began making her way down from the 40IP section toward the stage. As she moved, her security team, who had been strategically positioned throughout the arena, began coordinating with Madison Square Garden's technical staff in a way that made it clear this moment, while surprising, had been anticipated as a possibility. The atmosphere in Madison Square Garden was now electric beyond description. 20,000 people were about to witness something that had never happened before. A live vocal collaboration between the two greatest voices of their generation, improvised in the middle of what was supposed to be Whitney's solo concert. As Mariah made her way to the stage, both women began preparing for what everyone in the arena knew would be an extraordinary musical moment. Whitney's crew scrambled to set up an additional microphone and adjust the sound levels, while Mariah's own technical team, who had apparently been prepared for exactly this scenario, began coordinating with the venue's audio engineers. Patricia Williams, one of Madison Square Garden's senior sound engineers, later revealed just how prepared both teams had been for this possibility. "Both camps had been in communication with our technical crew for days before the concert," she admitted in a 2005 interview. "They had contingency plans for audio setup, microphone placement, and even song arrangements that could accommodate both voices. This felt spontaneous to the audience, but it was actually a carefully orchestrated moment of mutual respect that both artists had hoped might happen." As Mariah reached the stage and took her position next to Whitney, something beautiful began to happen. The competitive tension that had been built up by years of media comparison started to transform into something different. A recognition of mutual artistry and shared understanding of what it meant to carry the burden of extraordinary vocal gifts. Standing face to face for the first time in several years, Whitney and Mariah both seemed to realize simultaneously that their rivalry, while real in the media, was actually rooted in profound mutual respect. They were both at the absolute peak of their vocal powers, both had revolutionized popular music in their own ways, and both understood the unique pressures that came with being constantly judged by impossible standards. "You know what?" Mariah said to Whitney, speaking directly but allowing her microphone to pick up her words and broadcast them throughout the arena. "This is actually perfect. We've been compared for years, but we've never actually made music together. Let's show these people what happens when great voices decide to blend instead of compete." Whitney's response revealed the grace and wisdom that had made her not just a great performer, but a genuinely beloved figure in the music industry. "That's exactly right," Whitney replied, her competitive edge melting into genuine warmth. "Let's give New York something they'll never forget and show the world that there's room for more than one voice at the top." What followed was one of the most extraordinary vocal performances in live entertainment history. Instead of battling each other in a contest of range and power, Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey decided to collaborate, creating an impromptu medley that showcased both of their remarkable abilities while highlighting how beautifully their voices could complement each other. They started with a gospel-influenced arrangement that allowed Whitney to demonstrate her church-trained foundation, while Mariah provided intricate harmonies that showed her technical precision. The interplay between them was immediate and natural, as if they had been rehearsing together for months rather than creating music spontaneously on stage. Then they moved into Whitney's greatest love of all, with Mariah adding soaring counter melodies that elevated the song to heights neither could have reached alone. Whitney's powerful, soulful delivery combined with Mariah's crystalline runs created a vocal experience that had the crowd weeping with emotion. The performance was loose, spontaneous, and absolutely transcendent. 20,000 people were witnessing two vocal geniuses discovering in real time that they could create something more beautiful together than either could achieve individually, despite years of being told they were natural enemies. The emotional climax of their collaboration came when they performed an impromptu version of I Will Always Love You together, with Mariah providing intricate harmonies and vocal arrangements that turned Whitney's signature song into something entirely new and even more powerful. The sight of these two legendary voices supporting and elevating each other was so unexpected and so moving that many people in the audience found themselves crying. When the song ended, Whitney and Mariah embraced on stage, a genuine, heartfelt hug that lasted several moments and signaled the end of their media-driven rivalry and the beginning of a mutual respect that would define their relationship for years to come. That embrace changed everything. It was the moment when two of the greatest voices of all time realized they were better as allies than as competitors, and that their combined talents could create something more powerful than either could achieve alone. The hug represented not just personal reconciliation, but a rejection of the industry's tendency to pit successful women against each other instead of celebrating their individual achievements. The Whitney Houston-Mariah Carey collaboration at Madison Square Garden became legendary immediately. Within hours, bootleg audio recordings were circulating among music industry insiders and vocal enthusiasts. Within days, the performance was being discussed on every music television program and analyzed in every major music publication. But more importantly, the collaboration permanently changed the relationship between Whitney and Mariah. The public rivalry that had defined their careers and dominated music industry coverage was replaced by a private friendship based on mutual respect and shared understanding of what it meant to possess extraordinary vocal gifts in an industry that often demanded perfection. They began communicating regularly, sharing advice about vocal technique, the pressures of maintaining their instruments, and the challenges of staying grounded while living at a level of success that few people could truly understand. They even collaborated on several recordings that were never officially released but became treasured among music collectors and industry insiders. The Madison Square Garden collaboration became a turning point not just for Whitney and Mariah individually, but for the entire music industry's understanding of how female artists could relate to each other. It demonstrated that competition between great artists could be healthy and inspiring rather than destructive and personal, paving the way for future generations of female vocalists to support rather than tear down each other. When Whitney Houston died tragically in 2012, one of the most heartfelt tributes came from Mariah Carey, who spoke openly about how their Madison Square Garden collaboration had taught her that true artistry was about lifting others up, not putting them down. In her tribute, Mariah revealed that Whitney had called her just weeks before her death to tell her how proud she was of Mariah's continued evolution as an artist. In the years following their New York collaboration, both Whitney and Mariah spoke openly in interviews about how their supposed rivalry had been largely manufactured by media and industry forces that benefited from keeping successful women in competition with each other. Mariah pushed me to be better, Whitney said in a 1998 interview with Barbara Walters. Knowing that she was out there creating incredible music with that amazing voice made me want to dig deeper into my own artistry. That's what healthy competition should accomplish. It should elevate everyone involved, not tear anyone down. Mariah, characteristically more direct in her assessment, told MTV in 1999. Whitney was doing what I was doing at the highest possible level. Having her as a point of reference made me a better artist. But collaborating with her that night in New York taught me that we could inspire each other in a completely different way than competition ever could. The story of Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey at Madison Square Garden serves as a powerful reminder that our supposed rivals can become our greatest supporters when we choose collaboration over conflict. Both women were secure enough in their extraordinary talents to realize that working together could create something more beautiful and meaningful than anything either could create alone. Their willingness to set aside media narratives, industry expectations, and competitive instincts led to a moment of vocal magic that neither had planned but both treasured. It proved that sometimes the most powerful performances aren't the ones where you prove you're better than everyone else. They're the ones where you prove that great art comes from great artists lifting each other up. Today, there's a commemorative plaque in Madison Square Garden that honors the night when two of music's greatest voices became collaborators instead of competitors. It reads, "In celebration of the night when comparison became collaboration, November 15th, 1995, Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey." Every major vocalist who performs at Madison Square Garden is told a story of Whitney and Mariah, and many have been inspired to reach out to their own peers and supposed rivals to explore the possibility of collaboration rather than competition. The concert where Whitney Houston stopped her show because Mariah Carey showed up unannounced proved that sometimes the most beautiful music happens when great artists stop trying to outdo each other and start trying to create something amazing together. Sometimes the most memorable moments in entertainment history aren't the ones that were carefully planned and rehearsed. They're the ones that emerge spontaneously from genuine human connection and mutual respect between extraordinary talents who choose to build each other up instead of tear each other down. If this incredible story of rivalry transformed into sisterhood moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who understands that true strength comes from supporting other talented people, not competing with them. Have you ever turned a competitor into a collaborator? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing true stories about the moments when music history was made through unexpected partnerships and the power of choosing cooperation over competition.